Think about how large language models actually work. At their very core is this one profound idea. It's the secret engine driving modern artificial intelligence. We are going to look at how these models take human language and represent its meaning as literal geometry, as precise locations and directions in a vast mathematical space.
To grasp how remarkable this is, we have to start with a puzzle. You see, a language model lives in a completely dark room. It has no eyes, no ears, no physical reality to interact with whatsoever. It only ever sees text. So if a model has never actually petted a dog or drank a cup of coffee, how can it possibly know what those words mean? How does a system completely blind to the real world represent meaning at all?
Well, the solution they came up with is just mathematically brilliant. The model completely abandons human definitions. Instead, it turns every single word into a coordinate. A word vector is simply a long list of numbers that pinpoints a word's exact location in an imaginary, high-dimensional space. Meaning stops being a written definition in a dictionary and it becomes a physical location.
So because meaning is now a literal position, semantic relationships just become geometric relationships. Think about the words age and epic. They sit very close to each other in this space. Their vectors have a high similarity score, simply because their meanings are related. Meanwhile, a word like coffee is positioned far away in an entirely different region of the space. Similarity is directly encoded as physical closeness.
But where do these coordinates actually come from? Nobody is sitting there giving the model a dictionary. It all goes back to this beautiful idea from the linguist J.R. Firth. He said, "You shall know a word by the company it keeps." The model discovers these locations purely by observing billions of sentences and just noticing which words co-occur. Because cat and dog frequently appear near words like pet, vet, and furry, the model naturally positions them near each other in this geometric space.
Now, what is really fascinating is that it's not just about closeness. The directions themselves carry very specific relational meanings. The direction you travel to get from man to woman is the exact same distance and direction you travel to get from king to queen. Similarly, the trajectory from big to biggest perfectly mirrors the trajectory from small to smallest.
And that brings us to this mind-bending realization. Abstract linguistic structure, things like gender roles, pluralization, or tense, they just become reusable geometric moves. If you want to find the female counterpart of a word, or make a word plural, you just add a specific directional offset to its vector. The space has this internal structure that behaves almost like a physical grammar. Now, obviously, human words are way too complex to just map onto a simple 2- or 3-dimensional graph. Modern language models, like the most powerful versions of GPT-3, use a staggering number of dimensions. They actually use 12,288 dimensions to locate just a single word.
You might be wondering, why on earth do we need so many dimensions? Well, human meaning has thousands of semi-independent aspects. Is a word formal or informal? Is it abstract or concrete? Positive or negative? Each of these aspects needs its own dedicated direction, so they don't interfere with one another. In our regular 3D space, you can only have 3 truly perpendicular axes, but in a 12,288 dimensional space, you can pack in an astronomical number of nearly perpendicular directions. This vast capacity is absolutely essential for capturing fine-grained nuances, allowing the model to mathematically distinguish between words like big, large, and enormous.
But mapping words to static points introduces a bit of a complication. Language is full of ambiguity, specifically something linguists call polysemy. That's when a single word has multiple meanings depending entirely on the context in which it's used. Take the word bank. It can mean the land next to a river, or it can refer to a financial institution. If a model assigns just one single static coordinate to the word bank, it's essentially forced to place it somewhere in the middle, like a weird average of all its senses. For modern language processing, a static point in space is simply no longer sufficient. To solve this, modern models use a mechanism called attention. Attention allows words to essentially look around at their neighboring words in a sentence and dynamically shift their position in the vector space based on that specific context. It literally turns fixed points into moving points.
Let's think about how this actually works. Say the model is processing the partial sentence, John wants his bank to cash the. As the words pass through the layers of the network, that attention mechanism kicks in. When it processes the word bank, it looks at the surrounding words, like cash. Because of this context, the model actively slides the vector for bank away from the geographical region of river and firmly toward the semantic region of finance. The meaning of the word is literally being moved by its neighbors. And that brings us to the grand payoff, predicting the next word. Let's stick with that same sentence. John wants his bank to cash the. The final word currently in the sequence is the. Now, on its own, the is semantically empty, but because it sits at the very end of the sentence, it acts as a sort of workspace. As the model processes the sentence layer by layer, attention pulls context from John, from bank, and from cash, and it folds all of that information right into the vector for the. By the final layer, the point for the word the has been dragged entirely across the geometric space until it lands squarely in the region for the word check.
This is just a profound way to understand what's actually happening inside the machine. The act of reasoning or predicting what comes next isn't a lookup table or a set of human-coded rules. It is, quite literally, a physical trajectory. Next word prediction is simply a point being displaced through geometric space until it arrives at the correct answer.
So, to consolidate everything we've looked at in this explainer, these models construct an incredibly rich mathematical map of human language. Meaning is captured entirely as a relational structure. Our whole vocabulary forms this vast, multidimensional geography, and the context of a sentence acts as a kind of gravity, pulling and moving words through that space to crystallize their exact meaning.
But this leaves us with one final open question. It's what philosophers call the grounding problem. The model has demonstrably built a perfect structural map of how words relate to other words. But does this beautiful geometry ever actually touch the real world? Or is it only a map of how we talk, with the physical reality of a dog, a cup of coffee, or a riverbank left entirely outside in the dark? It's a tension that remains at the very frontier of artificial intelligence today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.